Welcome back, everyone, to Data Science for Everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about asynchronous JavaScript. Let's get started. So before we really dive into asynchronous JavaScript coding, what is synchronous coding? Now, usually, if we go and we create up a piece of JavaScript code, so let's save this and do this as just script.js. We'll overwrite this. And if we have something, for an example, that is basic, so let word 1 is equal to hello, and then we say let word 2 is equal to Jimmy, then we can, for example, console log. All right, so word 1. And we can also do something like for what? Index 0 and length. And here, let's put this as just a really big number here. Okay. Oops. Let's say just a really large number, okay? And we just have this run, okay? We don't have to have anything inside of it, but just let it run. And then we say something like log word 2. Okay, now this is going to run, this loop is going to run for a long, long time, okay? Now, if we run this, and again, I won't run it right now, your machine is going to, will notice that greet, this word 1, excuse me, runs first. Then the program is going to wait a couple seconds, okay, or for quite a bit of time here in this instance. All right, and then it will run word 2. Now, this is because the code executes line by line. Again, it starts here at line 4, and then it will go and do line 6 through 8, and then it will do our console log at line 10. Now, this creates problems, though. If a certain piece of code, so again, this may take only a few seconds. But what if it takes 10 seconds? What if it takes 20 seconds, okay? And after a while, it won't be able to execute any code until it is done, until it is finished. That is a problem, and it's going to cause delays. So this is synchronous code. Now, what is asynchronous code? Well, with asynchronous code, multiple tasks can be executed at the same time while tasks in the background finish. Now, this is what we can call non-blocking code. Now, the execution of other code won't stop while the asynchronous task is finished. So let's take a look at turning this into some asynchronous code. All right, so we can keep all of this, but we're going to change out this for loop here to something like set time out. Okay, and let's put in a function here, and we're going to do, actually, let's just do it like this instead. And here we will go on and say log console async. Okay, so for asynchronous. Then we will go here for the rest of the timeout function, and we'll say for 10,000 milliseconds. Okay, and then we'll have it run this console log for word 2. Okay, now what's going to happen in this above code, though, is if you run the code on our machine, we will see word 1, then we will see word 2, and then it logged even if there is code. So there's code in between them, right? The set timeout. Okay, even though it's there, it will be executed 10 seconds later. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be studying asynchronous code in JavaScript in detail so that you can learn how to write your own synchronous code. Now, I just wanted to give you guys kind of a small taste about what async JavaScript is using built-in functions to kind of just get you guys pre-gamed and ready for what's to come. So now let's go on and talk about how callbacks work in JavaScript. So let's remember about what callback functions are. So a callback function is a function passed into another function as an argument, which is then invoked inside the outer function to complete some kind of routine or action. So let's write up another example of code that would look like this. So we have, let's create up a function here, and we'll call it computation. The parameters here will be some action, X and Y. So if action is equal to, add. So in this instance, maybe we're going to be starting to make a calculator, for example. Okay, we can do return X plus Y. All right. Else, if action is equivalent to, let's say, divide, we'd return in here X divided by Y. Okay. Now here we can console log out computation of add, and we'll say 5 and 7. All right, and then we can, not constructor. We can do console log here of computation, and we want divide, and we'll do, let's say, 2 by 2 and 4. Okay. Now in this example, we have 2 operations, but what if we want to maybe add more operations to it? Then the number of if-else statements here. So notice we have an if and an else and an else-if statement in here. Then if we want to add more of those operations, so again, subtraction, multiplication, maybe square roots, something like that, then the number of if-else statements is going to increase, and this is going to make our length, it's going to be too long, and it's going to be, well, it's just going to be a mess, right? So this is going to be too long if we want to add more actions. So let's go back through and change this up utilizing callbacks. Okay, so I'm going to go on and just comment this out for now. I will move down here. Maybe zoom in a little bit more for you guys. So now we want to actually create up some functions and some callback functions. So let's go on and create these up. So first off, let's go back to our first 2. So we had a function for add, and it takes in X, takes in X and Y. And it returns in here X plus Y. And then we have some function here. So let's do divide. And again, it takes in parameters X and Y. And it's going to return in X divided by Y. Then let's go on and do, actually, let's not even put any more functions, but let's just create up a nice, our computation function again. Computation here, and it's going to take a callback function. It's also going to take in X, and it's also going to take in Y. And it's going to return in here the callback of X and Y. Okay, so now we can do our nice log, computation, add, and then we'll do something like, 11 and 2. And then we can also do a nice console log of computation of divide and do 4 and 2. So now we can use the computation with 3 arguments. One of them is an operation. When we enter in this computation function, the function returns a function with a given action name, and it, in response, calls that function a return, and it returns the result. So now here's the thing. Callback functions are fantastic, okay? But we have this thing that's called callback hell. And if you were to go and create a bunch of callbacks, if we use too many of them, it's going to, again, that's what it's called, is callback hell. Because this happens when you nest callbacks within callbacks, and it gets levels and levels deep, okay? So the shape of this callback hell usually looks like a pyramid. So let me go in and grab just an example. It's relatively common, okay? And callback hell has a tendency to look, again here, so we'll say, looks something like this, okay? And again, you see that it has this giant pyramid shape in there. And well, that is something that we would like to avoid, okay? We want to avoid callback hell at all costs. So in this code, you know, when 1 second passes, the code writes 1 second, and then again, it'll do 2 seconds and 3 seconds and all that stuff. Now, how do we escape this callback hell? Okay, well, we can do that with promises. Now, JavaScript promises are a placeholder for a future result of an asynchronous operation. What this means is that it is a container for a future value. So, when we use promises, we don't need to rely on callbacks, which help us avoid so this helps us avoid the callback hell. Now, before showing us promises, all right, and we want to work through some code, let's actually explain this a little bit, okay? So promises are a lot like lottery tickets, okay? So when you want to buy a lottery ticket, it says that you will get money if our outcome is correct. That is like a promise. Now the lottery draw happens asynchronously. And if the numbers match, we receive the money that was promised us. So what we can do, and again, there's this fantastic site, and let me actually just share it with you here and real quickly, and let me pull it up, and let me bring it over here. And it's called Course APIs. So later on, we'll be practicing with APIs, and we'll be using it to grab data from here, okay? So we can use things that are called fetch, okay? And that's what I'm going to show you right now, is we can go over here and say const request is equal to fetch. And here we're going to actually go through and fetch the data. So we're wanting a request from some API. So let's go through and let's look at maybe what we want to do. Let's maybe do tours project. So here you can see that inside this tours project, it has a bunch of information. So it has it's an object, okay? So it's a JSON file, and it has IDs, it has JPEG images, it has prices, it has all of these types of things. So we can grab this URL and we can place it in here. Great. Now we can go through and we can console log out our request. So I guess in this instance, I probably need to open up the associated file. So let me go over here. Let me go to my index file here that's associated with this. I will open it up with Google Chrome, and I will bring it over here for us. All right, so if I refresh this and I inspect it, I go to the console, and notice here it has this promise, okay? So if we look inside of it, it has all of this information. It has a cache, It has the length of the cache. It has some constructor argument. It has a then statement. And again, it has all of this information to it. But we don't actually have any of the information that we had, okay? We don't have this, do we? Okay, we don't have it anywhere that we would want it. So again, we can maybe put it to, it's raw. This is the raw, and I have a parser on here so that we can actually look at it nice and neatly. And so we have this nice data. We want to grab this data, but we don't have it yet. We just have the promise. So it has a bunch of particular states and results. And again, this is going to be run asynchronously. So after the promise is settled, we have to either fulfill it or reject the promise based on the outcome of our promise. So we can handle these different states in our code. So how do we actually consume or utilize these promises? Okay, well, we have our console log, we have our request. Now, what we can do is on the end here, we can say dot then. Okay, so then here is a method to consume a promise. All right, so now we need to actually put in inside here, we can put in a nice function, and let's call this a response. Okay, because we actually want to grab a hold of the data. So this is how we're going to basically unpack the information. And so let's do console log here, response. So we actually want it to spit out the data, and we also want it to return out here our response.json. So we're going to JSONify everything. And then we actually want to grab a hold of this. Okay, and so I'm gonna get rid of this response here. And let's do .then. And here we want to grab a hold of some data. Okay. And again, the data here is technically this JSON file. Okay. And then we're going to console log out the data. So for those of you that are interested in D3 and utilizing these things, this is very important, okay? Because this is how you can get a lot of data from your APIs and how you can pull it into your projects. So let's go on and take a look at what's going on over here now. So let's refresh this. All right, so first we get the response, right? So the response has a lot of information in it. It has that there's this URL, that it wasn't redirected, what its status was. It has headers, was there headers in the prototype of this? It has all kinds of information that we can do to it. And again, it has all this information. Now, it even has this little JSON here. You can see there's information inside the JSON. It has text. It'll tell you what's kind of going on with it, but there's all this nice information that we have. Now, what we really want is to go to here when we've JSONified that data. Okay, so this is the data output. This is our second round of the data coming out. And notice we have all of this information. We have the ID, we have the image, we have the information, we have the name, we have the price of our tours. Again, if you go back here, you can see here, this is our same one. We have it right here. We have our course API, our tours project, and we have all of this information. Fantastic. So now we can grab a hold of it and we can do all kinds of stuff. Later on, maybe we can fill in our website with the information with the picture. We can show people the prices. Maybe later on, you can add in discount functions, all of that stuff to it. So let's go back and have one more discussion about this piece of code. I know, and I kind of have to zoom out a little bit so that you guys can see it here. But first off, let's go through this line by line. So first off, we're making the request to the API. We're fetching this information. Then after the fetch request, we can then then use a then function or a method to consume the promise. So we're consuming the promise to here. Okay. After that, we want to return a bunch of information like the header, the status, and etc. Again, we've seen that from what we had. So then we specifically need the data to be converted to a JSON, which returns a promise. Okay. So then we're going to have to utilize it again. All right. So to handle that promise, we're using the then method to log the data from the response. And again, using the multiple then methods on a single request is called chain promising. So this whole thing here is chain promising. Okay. So the next portion of how we do this, now this current example that we had did not have a rejection, okay? The data came, we got the data, and it worked out perfectly fine. But what happens if we have a rejected promise? So how do we handle rejection? Consuming promises is good, but it is very important to learn how to handle the rejection of those promises. In the real world, there are situations that could maybe make our app crash due to the handling of rejection promises, and we don't want our applications to crash. It's very annoying, it's very slow, it's very time consuming. So let's make an example. We will put in our promises into a function called call. Okay, call. Whoops. It's called call, and it does it again. Call. Okay. Now, in HTML, we're going to create a button, and it's going to add an event listener. So let's go back over. Let's open up our HTML. And let's create this up. And let's change this up. Let's make you what do we want to make it? Hello promises. Okay. So inside of here, let's create up a button. And we want it to be a button of a button. Okay. And it's going to be request. So if we go back over to our HTML file, notice here we have a button here. It's not actually referenced to anything. Okay. So again here, it's gonna have an issue, especially because I have this call here that's not actually running anything. But let's go on and create up a request. And let's play with it, okay? So I'm going to comment you out. And let's make a function called call. No, not call back. I want just call. And it's going to not really take anything here. Oops. And so let's go on and do const request is equal to fetch. And I think maybe we can just let's go on and just use the same fetch that we used before. So we used our tours, because again, tourism data is very cool. All right. Then let's go on and do our, then we have a request. Let's make our arrow function. And we want it to do console log our response. Oh, and actually, let's not put this as request. That's request. Response. And we're going to return here our response.json, and we want the JSON data from it. We're going to use another then. We're going to grab data. Again, this is exactly the same as the previous one. I'm just coding it out just for us to have a little bit of practice. So let's also do a nice console log, and we want to spit out the data. All right, so that's our call. All right, or that's going to utilize us to call the data. So let's const, and we have a, let's just put btn for button is equal to document dot query selector. We want a button. And then a button here is going to add an event listener to click. We're listening for click, and then we're going to have a function here that is going to be listening for, again, call. It will run call on click. Okay, so why are we doing this? We're setting up a promise to get rejected. Once we run this code, it will inspect and select the network tab. And again, we'll set no throttling to offline, and we're going to click the send button request. And you will get a rejected promise. So if we go, let's save this once more. And if I run this just now as it is, okay, and I click this, notice it works, okay? But again, if I go, and let's actually set it up to have this rejection, okay? So let's go to network, okay? And we want to disable cache, no throttling. So if we refresh this again, well, and let me go to console here. If I refresh it, all right, this works up. We have some issue, depreciation, something's depreciated. It's okay, we'll work on that in a minute. All right, that still works. Okay, again, notice it still works. So then now let's go back over to our network, and we have this no throttling. And again, we can set this to offline, okay? So I disabled the cache, and notice here we have some things here are getting a little antsy. It's okay. So if I clear this up, let me go back to the console now, and let me clear this and let me refresh. Notice, now we get an error, okay? So here it gets error, internet disconnected, type failed to fetch at call, HTML button element anonymous. Okay, so we have forced it to fail. Now, here's the thing though. This can happen in the real world, right? It can happen when your internet is down. It can happen maybe the server that is hosting the data is down. So we need to be able to take care of this error. So how are we going to do that? We need to catch the error, right? And that's exactly what we can do. We can go here and we can add in here. We can do dot catch here, and we want to catch the error. Okay. And we will do something like alert error. Now this, in turn, should take care of our error. So if I refresh this and I hit this, oh, now it says, this page says type error failed to fetch. Okay, so now it still has that error, but notice it's a little bit less. We've actually caught the error and we've dealt with it accordingly. Now, catch is a method. So here, right here, catch. All right, is a method, will get an error from a rejected promise, and it will display that in an alert. Now, we can get the error message because we got a rejected promise, which indicates that there is some issue. We can also do whatever we want with this catch block whenever we encounter an error. So along with the catch block method, there is one more thing that is very helpful, and that's called finally. Okay, so if we go here, we can set up dot finally, and we can Oops, I keep doing that today. And then we can set up something like log don't worry, help is on the way, or something like that. You can just have it do something else, okay? Now we use finally method for clearing things up after the API call. And there are always going to be, there's a bunch of different ways that you can use the finally method. So let's go on and go back over here. Let's refresh and let's run. Okay. And here, notice, don't worry, help is on the way. So again, maybe you want to put a little bit of a message, depending on maybe what this error is. You can maybe tell your user, hey, this is what's going on, or whatever else. Again, there's many different ways that you can utilize the finally method. So let's go on and let's undo some of the damage we did here. So if you want to undo this, go to network. Okay, I'm going to keep the cache disabled, but I'm going to go through and just put this as no throttling so that I can go on and go back to my console log and I can run this request, and now it works again. Okay, so I think this video has gone a little bit long today, and so I will end this here, and tomorrow we'll work on how to create promises in JavaScript. If you guys like this and you want more of this type of content, please like, subscribe, and maybe put in some comments down below. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.